Hooray, thank you very much. Now give another wave to our amazing panel. We're going to have a conversation about cities, nature and why it's important. And rather than me introducing them, the best people to introduce our lovely panel are the panel themselves. But before they do that, I'm Sue Armstrong-Brown. I'm the Director of Thought Leadership at CDP, which is the Global Environmental Disclosure Platform. We have over 1,000 cities disclosing to us at the moment, telling us about all of their work on integrating environment into cities and the huge benefits that can be derived from doing so. So I'm really excited to hear what the panel are going to talk to us about this morning. What I'd like to do is invite each one of you to introduce yourselves, and rather than giving us your CV, I'd like you to give us your name and where you work, and then tell us something that's inspired you about cities and nature. Over to you, Chris.
Hello, everybody. My name's Chris Hammond, Chief Exec at UK 100. We're a network of local government leaders from across the country. We've got two fantastic ones on the panel here with us today, coming together to combat climate change and tackle the ecological emergency. I think one thing that's really inspired me is how much ambition there is in the local government sector, how much delivery has happened despite significant budget pressures, despite them having no legal obligation to do anything in the climate space. Despite that, that's where the innovation is happening in the public sector, and that's what's inspiring me.
Zaina.
Can you hear me? Oh, perfect. Okay. Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Zaina Nazir. I'm a co-founder of Cities Forum. I'm also external expert for the UK Department for Transport and the chair for ITS UK Road User Charging Forum. I'm passionate about transport. I've done so many other businesses. I always go back to transport. I've done MBA at the University of Chicago to change, and I came back to transport. So transport is about our everyday life. It changes our life. It can make it happy or miserable. So I like to make people's life happy by providing sustainable, affordable, and inclusive transport for everyone. So at Cities Forum, we are like a think tank based in the UK with offices around the world, in Dubai and Spain and Kenya and Colombia and different parts of the world. And what we do is we build smart cities, sustainable, clean, affordable, and reliable transport and cities for government, for companies, for authorities. And I'm really looking forward to this session. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Reset Connect, for another year. This is not my first time. Look forward to be here today and to come back every year because I'm passionate about what you do, and hopefully we can come up with a great talk today. Thank you very much, Sue.
Thank you. Liam.
Brilliant. No, good morning, everybody. I'm Liam Robinson. I'm the leader of Liverpool City Council. I think one of the things I'm always very, very conscious of is that Liverpool is a river city and we're a coastal city region. And if you look at all of the kind of the predictions for 2050, if we don't keep global temperature increases below 2 degrees, our city, just like a lot of kind of coastal areas across Britain, is at a real significant, severe flood risk. So for me, kind of there's a real strong imperative that we've got to tackle this. No ifs, no buts. What inspires me is actually the vast majority of people want us to do that. When I think about all the different things we've been doing on our transport network, for example, the way we've renewed so much on our local rail network to make it particularly accessible, the way that that's kind of empowered people, particularly disabled people, to travel around. When I think about some of the things we've done extending cycle lanes and the fact that we know 70% of people in our region support that, even though there is a noisy minority that don't. And equally as well, the fact, particularly post-COVID, the way that people want kind of really good quality, green, livable environments, the way kind of our parks played such a vital role during the pandemic, and particularly with so much of the kind of new housing development on brownfield sites that we've got planned in the city and the region, we want to make sure that at the heart of that is really high quality public realm and green infrastructure. So much so that one of our kind of showcase developments of what we call Liverpool Waters on brownfield former Dockland on the banks of the River Mersey, in the next few weeks we are about to start the construction of a brand new park that is going to be at the heart of that whole development to make sure the community we develop there will be livable, not just for the years ahead, but frankly for the next century and beyond. So what inspires me is the fact that the vast majority of people want us to do this.
Thank you. Ben.
Thanks, Sue, and good morning, everyone. Lovely to be here. My name is Ben Smith. I work for Arup. At our core, Arup is a global consulting engineering business, but we're much, much more than that. I am myself, and I'm an environmental consultant. You asked what inspires me. I'm inspired by the hundreds, thousands, maybe 1 million people up and down the country and around the world, actually, who in their communities, with their charities, work day to day against all the odds on projects that make a difference for their local place. That could be about reducing their own footprint, it could be about conserving nature around them, it could be getting more people outside, whatever it is. Every time I meet people who are in that fight, I'm really inspired by them.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, you've grown. Ryan.
Hello, there we go. I'm Councillor Ryan Jude. I'm the Cabinet Member for Climate, Ecology, Culture and Air Quality in Westminster City Council. And I'll just say it's brilliant to see so many people coming down to London for London Climate Action Week. Westminster is obviously at the heart of London, at the heart of our capital, and we're doing everything we can to tackle the dual crises of the climate and ecological emergencies. What inspires me? So I first got elected in 2022, and Westminster Council used to be of a slightly different colour for its entire history, more of a blue hue. Not that that is particularly important to what policies were being enacted, but I was a local activist, I work in environmental policy, and I always say I was an environmental activist who then accidentally became a politician. And so when we got into power, I came in with all these ideas on climate and nature that we wanted to implement. And what's inspired me is how quickly everybody has got behind that. And that's everyone from our fantastic team at the council, some of whom are in the audience today, to local residents who really wanted us to do more, to the businesses across the city who have really worked in partnership with us, because councils, as many of you know, we only control between 2 to 5% of the emissions in our local area. And most of the green spaces in Westminster, a third of Westminster is green spaces, aren't owned by me. You know, they're Hyde Park, they're Regent's Park, so we need to work in partnership with other people. And so what's been inspirational for me is how much everyone's come behind that vision. And I'm going to look forward to talking about some of the things we've been doing throughout the panel today.
Thank you so much. And as you can see, we've got a very, very excited and inspired panel. Hopefully they'll be able to share some of that with you. Now, it's London Climate Action Week, and we're here talking about cities and nature. And everyone's very familiar with the climate story, the climate agenda. That's the dominant environmental issue of our times. So why is it so important that we need to take that broader sustainability lens when we're thinking about running our cities? I'd like to turn to our two councillors, Ryan and Liam, please, if you wouldn't mind picking this one up for us. Liam, would you like to start?
Yeah, more than happy to. Look, I think it goes back to those kind of original points that what is a city at the end of the day? And it's somewhere where people live, interact, sort of go to work, go to school, go to sort of education. So sustainability has to be at the heart of it. These can't just be about concrete dormitories where we interact. We want these to be really quality places for everybody to live and spend the majority of their lives. Because let's be honest, the vast majority of people increasingly are living in urban environments. So, you know, it has to be kind of at the heart of what we're seeking to do. And it has to be based on all of those different granular things that kind of make people's lives easier. So, as I said before, having real quality places for people to live, really high quality homes, you know, ones that are well insulated so they're actually cheaper to heat, ones where we've got lots of green infrastructure so they're quality places people want to be, where people can actually travel around in a sustainable way. We certainly don't want things that are car dominated. We want to sort of really support walking, cycling, high quality public transport, and where people need private vehicles, actually move into something that's completely electrified, hence why we're rolling out so many electrical vehicle charging points. So I think for me it has to be at the heart of all of those things, of way people live their life. When you think about the ecological emergency, though, which is allied with the climate emergency, it's actually about recognising the way that our ecosystems are under great stress in urban environments. So it isn't just about providing nice grass. How are we making sure that all the biodiversity is actually supporting all of those different kind of species which are dependent upon it, because it all has to be sort of interlinked. What I think is great is the way that over recent years, the vast majority of us are waking up to that. I always think as a kid growing up in the 90s, we weren't necessarily as kind of linked into that agenda in a way that now thankfully we are. And what does again inspires me is actually it's many kids who are rightfully in school saying, no, this is the environment we want to grow up in the future. And I think that stands us all in very, very good stead to make sure we deliver on that.
Thank you. Ryan, would you like to add to that? Why should we be thinking about nature as a whole in cities?
Yeah, I mean, it's a cliche, but it is two sides of the same coin. They are intrinsically interlinked. And I think sometimes we can forget that when we're only focusing on climate carbon mitigation. Westminster, we declared an ecological emergency in 2023. And this is something I was really passionate about us doing, because we'd had the climate emergency for years, but I felt that certain policies being implemented in a way that was having a negative effect on nature. And to Liam's point, it comes to what do people want to see in a place that they live. When I was growing up, I loved bird watching. I still do. I still go out when I can to on the weekends. I don't want kids in Westminster to think, oh, well, it's more of an urban environment here, so it's only right that I don't see birds. But I can read about them in this book. I can see that we used to have these types of things in Regent's Park, these types of things in Queen's Park, and I don't think that's right. And when we declared the ecological emergency, I made a big point about that being the fundamental reason why we need to do this. A little story here. The opposition stood up and said, this is vacuous statements and virtue signalling and no one really cares. And I obviously really disagreed with that. And I think the evidence has been shown in the way that the policy has been received in the years since. So earlier this year, we planted the first ever urban microforest in inner London. It's going to be 5,000 trees just off the Westway, right near Paddington. And that was something that took 2 years of planning, 2 years of work to find the perfect way to do it, to get the community involved. And I'm telling you now, I had more positive emails as a councillor about that microforest than I've ever had on any of our retrofit policy or anything else, because it's something that people see every day. It's their community. They want to feel proud of where they live. And so as we're implementing them, yes, we could talk about the data, we could talk about the stats and the flood alleviation, the SUDs that we're implementing as part of our planning policy now, but it's maintaining that view that people want to live in a place they're proud of.
Thank you. I love that idea of people, this fundamentally being about making places that people are proud to be. And I want to turn to that point because I think we can all picture the contrast between the leafy streets of a prosperous area and the concrete jungle of somewhere else. And it's really got to be an underlying thought here that all of the communities, including the underserved ones, historically underserved ones, can benefit from taking a cities and nature approach. So I'd like to ask Ben, if you could perhaps offer some comments on how do we make sure that everybody in the community can benefit from taking this kind of approach?
Yeah, thanks, Sue. I think there's quite a few different thoughts. I mean, first of all, we have to understand our communities and the environmental burdens or challenges. So data is important, in terms of where are the particular hotspots for air pollution, where is there a particular place where it's really difficult to access green space. And then we overlay on that our demographic data and data about any particular communities that are sort of underserved. So the data is one side of it, and I think most city governments in the UK certainly are sort of getting into that and really getting a better understanding of where there are particular issues that need to be addressed in particular locations. Then there's the policy design, and I think the really important point there is making sure that you're inclusive in the way that you do the policy design, and that you make sure you bring in a really diverse group of stakeholders to consult around any policy that you are developing to make sure that there is not going to have any unintended consequences. In addition to that, I think there's then the funding. I mean, local governments, city governments are often giving out funding to communities. The way in which that is done is important, and that's, from an equity point of view, that matters. Being transparent about what you're putting out, how you can apply for it, how the applications are going to be reviewed and assessed, I think is really important. And then promoting that and tracking progress on the projects that you have funded if you're a city government. And then I think finally, partnerships and delivery as well. Because if you engage with grassroots community action groups who are particularly proud of the place they live, to pick up on what you were saying before, they're going to be also the people who are going to help you to make sure it's delivered in the best way, and that there's a legacy there, and that place that you've improved is looked after for the long term. So I think probably quite a lot of different points that kind of all need to come together to make sure that anything that we're doing is inclusive.
That's absolutely brilliant. You've just given us a programme plan and a data underpin for running cities and nature programmes. So I hope everyone wrote that down. That's free consultancy right there. But Liam, there are groups of people who quite often don't engage with this, and it's crucial that they do. So how do you go about ensuring that the whole community is engaged in shaping some of these nature solutions?
I think it's multiple things at the end of the day, because in a local authority world, we're quite good at doing what I call traditional consultation. And kind of making sure that we get kind of lots of people's views through those traditional lenses. I always remember a few years ago we actually started making sure that we were doing consultations around bus services, which actually wasn't happening in most parts of the country, really to make sure that those people who depend on those services kind of had an input into exactly what they wanted to see. But I think you've got to go further than that, because let's be honest, it's very easy just to sort of put something on a website or a QR code and expect people to sort of engage in a very traditional way. I think it's about how we do discursive things. We're about to kick off our own kind of citizens' jury to look at kind of what more we can do in this space. I think, to be honest, it also depends on all of us that are elected representatives, frankly, to spend a lot of time in our communities, on doorsteps, talking to people, and actually kind of getting all of that feedback to make sure we deliver on the things that they want to see. And let's be very honest about it, where we have a minority of people who, let's say, are not believers in this, we actually engage in that argument in the right way, and so that kind of, for whatever reason you may have been told that this isn't necessary, or it's unaffordable, or it will cause you difficulties by stopping you doing things in your life, actually all of that's wrong. This is necessary, it's vital, it's doable, and actually can be done in a way which enhances your life rather than kind of just prevents you from doing stuff. So I think it's got to be multifaceted, hasn't it?
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Chris, did you want to come in on this?
I've got Zaina's dodgy mic. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. I think as far as kind of engagement is concerned, we in the past had a very parent-child relationship with some of our communities. So this is what we're going to do. You tell us how much you dislike it, and we'll do it anyway. And I think, that's usually on a website somewhere buried 9 links deep. So I think the kind of more active approaches you've seen have been far more, I think, towards being honest about the challenges, being honest about some of the trade-offs, and then having those kind of perspectives from a wide range of individuals being at the table. So I think you're seeing the sector do far more better engagement than it has done in the past. I think just looping back round to integrating nature into all of our strategies, all of our plans is really, really important. Not just seen as something to the side, something that's nice to have. And I think Liam and Ryan talked really kind of succinctly and passionately about that. But I think it's so important for, let's put the moral arguments aside. If you look at the economic, the social, and the health benefits of nature-based solutions, it makes absolute sense that we do this. 40% of species in this country have declined since the 1970s, either significantly or extremely. Now that's really worrying. And I think if you live near nature, you have better mental health, you have better economic opportunities, you have better places to get human connection, which is really important in those big urban centres, that you've got those free to access spaces, you've got that clean air that comes from nature-based solutions. So it's a win-win, but it hasn't been as integrated as it should have been in the past. And I think it is the great galvanizer at a time of significant polarization. So we know that the political consensus on net zero is cracked. Some say it's dead. I think it can be revived. But that requires us to talk and engage in a way where we can galvanize people to come around issues. And I think nature is that antidote to polarization. And you see the outrage that we had over the pollution on our lakes, our riverways, and our beaches. And the community response was, how dare this happen? These are our spaces, and they've been exploited. So I think, and that cuts across all political thought, all different communities, and I think that nature being that antidote is something we should really take forward in these really difficult, highly charged times.
I absolutely love the idea of positioning nature as the antidote to social ills, and I completely agree, actually. Ryan, you wanted to add a point here.
Yeah, three things. So engagement, data, and then how they interlink. So firstly, completely agree on everything that's just been said about being out in your community, knocking on doors. We pulled together a citizens' assembly in Westminster, and they gave a series of recommendations. We've embedded that into our climate emergency action plan, and we still convene them every 6 months now, where they come, I give them an update on how I'm doing against their recommendations. They hold me accountable. I think that's really important, that it's not just a one and done sitting on a shelf somewhere, but it's contributing actively to the work that we're doing. But the data side, it shouldn't be a controversial thing to say that we as politicians should be making evidence-based decisions. And so the first thing that we did when we came into power was establish our environmental justice measure. So this was the first interactive map of its kind, which mapped out Westminster and looked at various environmental risks: flood risk, heat risk, access to sustainable transport, access to green spaces, tree canopy coverage. And then, as Ben said, it overlaid the IMDs, the indices of multiple deprivation. And lo and behold, the bits that had the worst environmental risks and hazards were our most deprived areas. And it's really important to note here that when people think of Westminster, they think of Mayfair, they think of Knightsbridge, they think of the Houses of Parliament. 2 in 5 kids in Westminster grow up in poverty. We've got some of the most deprived parts of the entire country in Queen's Park, in Pimlico North, in Church Street. And we felt that the previous administration hadn't focused on their worries and their problems. So with the environmental justice measure, it's meant that given the limited financial position that councils find themselves in, I'm able to make those decisions as to where we put our nature investment, our climate investment. But linking it back to engagement, it also means that some of those more affluent areas, which do have a lot of green space and a lot of tree canopy coverage, I get to say to them, well, the reason you've not received this round of funding is because they need it more down the road. And it's been really powerful and really helpful, because if I'd gone to them and said, you're not getting the money this time and I can't tell you why, obviously that would have a backlash locally. So getting the data is the first, most fundamental thing you can do, and then using that to make proper evidence-based decisions.
And as a director in a data-based environmental organisation, that is music to my ears, but also very true. Thank you. So we've heard a lot about the huge importance of working with communities to foster environmental solutions in cities. Let's also think about the other side, which is the infrastructure in cities. And that will shape how people and nature interact and the opportunities that can be built into cities. So I'd really like to think about how infrastructure, by which I mean transport, water, energy, buildings, roads, all of the hard bits, how can they be brought to better support both people and nature? I'm turning back to Ben. Can you give us another project plan?
Well, I'll do my best, yeah. I think the first thing is, you said, you've introduced that as think of all the things which are hard infrastructure. I would say that not all the infrastructure going forward needs to be hard or in the same vein as we've sort of had traditionally. So I think about transport, I think about moving away from sort of car-dominated places, taking car park spaces out, thinking about spaces on roads that can be also used for planting, seating, etc. I think about linear corridors where you could also kind of plant and you can create biodiversity links as well. And I think this goes for kind of all forms of infrastructure that you can imagine. If it's transport, it's about moving away from the car into more active travel, walking and cycling, and facilitating that. If it's about drainage, then let's think about not just big pipes to take water away, but swales and spaces which are also going to create amazing places for biodiversity to thrive as well. And then when we think about energy as well, we heard the previous session, I don't know if people were here listening to the transition that we're going through in the UK on energy, but there's also the opportunities for community power, and it's amazing projects again happening in London. Places, people like Repowering London, putting solar power on lots of social housing all around the city. So it doesn't have to always be big scale, massive infrastructure as we've imagined it. But let's think a little bit more about what we can do at a smaller scale that contributes to kind of demand reduction, changes the way people live and work. So I think there's a bit of a thought there, Sue.
Thank you very much. And building on that, I want to talk to Zaina with your transport expertise, this obviously is a huge connector for people right across all the ways we think about cities. So how can transport policies be used to bring to life, as well as the emissions avoidance of moving to more sustainable transport, that wider frame of all of the environmental benefits that can be built in when we start thinking better and more holistically about transport policies in cities?
Thank you, Sue. I thought you forgot about me. So speaking of funding, we heard a lot about funding. I believe there should be no free road. I think this can upset a lot of people, but there is a reason for that. So then when we talk about funding, we need to immediately speak about transparency. So congestion charging is brilliant. I love it. And but then we need to look into kind of the fair side of it, social side of it, where it's actually fair for everyone, because while it's affordable to some, it may not be affordable to others. So some exemptions must be taken, but in any case, if we look at the big picture, congestion charging, road user charging, especially now with London raising the fees for congestion charging, so this is going to be an issue, I guess. But while you're able to justify it where the money is going, then there should be no issue, because I believe, for example, London with the buses and public transport available, not affordable, available, then you have alternative. In Dubai, they've done the road user charging and the toll road, and then it was a little bit different, because what they have done is they've done the toll road first. Everyone objected because nobody wants to pay to drive. But eventually they use the money to build the metro, Dubai Metro. So it kind of, because this is new for the culture, for the region, it's new to pay to use the road. But then all the other kind of neighboring countries started following. Eventually it worked out. So it needs time to kind of get people accustomed to paying for driving. But what does that do? It kind of affects their behavior, their decision. Do I really need to take that trip? Do I really need to take a car? Can I not just carpool with someone else? So we need to think about all these. So it's like a changing our lifestyle in order to think about what can you do to save the environment? Because we can't deny that cars and transport are the major emission issue. And if you can't reduce the use of cars, then we're not going to go anywhere with everything we're building if we're going to make it easy for people to drive. Of course, this can be unfair to some. But if you look at the big picture, the number of people being victim of that decision of charging people to drive is much less than the overall benefit of people benefiting from clean air, benefiting from affordable, especially if you can use that money, as I mentioned, transparency is very, very important. So you need to make sure that this money is used to improve the public transport. In Europe, they have done an amazing, I would say Germany, they have done like a pilot last summer where it was, I believe, 19 or 29 euro per month, and you can use all kind of transport. It's like one fee that they pay monthly, and that's brilliant. And this has shifted magically the whole movement or the behavior of people to move away from their car, and that includes intra-cities, rail as well. So that's very nice. So you also have ULEZ, you have all kind of measures taken by the government to reduce the dependency on using the cars. On top of this, you have the UK Department for Transport making a lot of effort and basically working on the active travel, so trying to promote walking, promote cycling, micromobility, so a lot of scooters going on. But then again, we need to look at the policy of scooters, e-scooters, and bicycles thrown on the road, so that can be fixed. I mean, it's a small, minor issue compared to the big scheme of people kind of cycling instead of taking their car or taking Uber. So active travel is very important, and it affects people's behavior and kind of lifestyle. And finally, at last but not least, the 15-minute city. I know the buzz of 15-minute city and the people who made up that word and this magic is like, oh, this concept of 15-minute city. I believe London have had that for hundreds of years. Because London is kind of like a group of villages, where I come from in Hampstead. We have everything around. I don't need to go somewhere else. And that's the concept of 15 or 20-minute cities. Everything is accessible without having to basically drive to another area. But then with the 15-minute city, if you want to call it 15-minute city, but the concept is already there, you want to be careful not to kind of become kind of segregated and disconnected with others. So you want to make sure that everyone is welcome to your neighborhood. It's just that you can stay within your neighborhood and get all your services done without having to travel, and this also can save the environment. And then you have the low traffic neighborhood, LTN in London. Also, a lot of people can oppose that. But I would say that people who don't drive are happy with that because this also reduces the emission and increases the safety because traffic and road safety is very, very important. And with the LTN, you have seen very low kind of accidents and death. So it has improved a lot the traffic safety. Also, maybe, I don't know if I should talk about electric vehicle or connected autonomous vehicle. With the electric vehicles, clearly this is, can you still hear me? Okay. Yeah, with the electric vehicles, it's definitely happening. We've worked as Cities Forum on many electric vehicle master planning in Europe, user chi, as well as in the other countries around the world, in Thailand and different places, and it's definitely happening. An electric vehicle can save the planet, but also affordability is very important. And for the autonomous vehicles, so as long as we can focus on the social side of it, so it does have some good social side, but then when it comes to safety, it's still not there. But with the autonomous vehicle, kind of it can help with reducing the emission as well. And it is more kind of inclusive because it can help people with disability to be on the road. I mean, trying not to increase the traffic on the road, but at least to kind of help people who need to be moved and are, don't have people to take them. So the idea is if we're thinking always about inclusive, affordable, diverse transport for all, I think that would save the planet.
Thank you. So I think we're building up a fantastic picture here of a freely moving but low emission city with everything within reach, with built-in green infrastructure, underpinned by data, fully engaged citizens. It sounds great. I want to move there. Let's all go. Why aren't we there yet, Zaina? What are the barriers? What's stopping us? If we can imagine it, why haven't we built it?
For the autonomous vehicle or what?
For the whole picture. But I'm going to ask everybody else too, so you don't have to know all of them.
I'm not going to point at Liam and Ryan, but politics is, maybe not you guys, but definitely politics is one thing. Funding, Ben mentioned funding, but also we spoke about transparency. The issue with when it comes to, and I started my talk with saying I believe there should be no free road. And but then the issue with that is London have been bold in that, so they don't have an issue with except with the Western extension. So that was unfortunately stopped. But when it comes to other cities, some politicians don't want to implement congestion charging because this can reduce their popularity. And if there is a good business case and if it helps the city, it must be done. Doesn't matter. One perfect example is in Stockholm. So Stockholm, what they have done is they have done a pilot study, 6-month pilot study for congestion charging in Stockholm in Sweden. And so the study before it was implemented, the pilot, first it was the majority against it, but then after 6 months, the majority were with it. And then they went ahead and did it when they proved the actual number of congestion-less, better air quality, so the improvement and where the money is being spent. So my point is, if I can save £5 and then I'm 1 hour late, plus this frustration of being on the road. I want to pay that £5 and be there on time and not be frustrated, because there is very high value for well-being. So I'm willing to pay for my well-being. Otherwise, I can delay my travel. I can do something about it. So, I mean, I wouldn't say nothing is being done. I'm just saying we're not there yet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ben, you wanted to come in as well. Think about the barriers, and I'm going to wrap solutions in as well. What do we need to overcome now to get us there?
Yeah, thanks, Sue. I mean, I was just going to say, we can imagine that place, and there's a really, I think, great guidebook that we worked on with C40 Cities called Green and Thriving Neighbourhoods, which does a great job of sort of articulating what that place might look like. People might want to have a look at that. But I was just going to come back on your point about why is it not happening yet. If we can imagine it, why is it not happening? I personally, I don't blame the politicians. I think that politics tends to follow people, and I don't think we've got everybody quite on board with the vision yet. So I think it's about how we engage to try and describe this place that we want to live in, and how we make that more of a priority for more people. The reality is that is not the thing which is most pressing for most people in their day-to-day lives. A lot of people have got far more pressing things to worry about. So that is, I think, what our job that we've got to do, is try and get more people engaged in that vision of that place, and then we can maybe all work together to try and make them a reality.
Okay, thank you. So there, you mentioned this tension between the short-term urban demands and then the long-term resilience goals, which is absolutely right. Ryan, you wanted to comment on that. I'm going to come to you, Chris.
Yeah, I partly blame the politics, so I'll explain what I mean by that. So I guess there's three main barriers that I see. One is on proper collaboration, integration of decisions. One is on funding. Then one is on political bravery and political confidence. I think very often we get it the wrong way around. A lot of politicians do, where we make decisions because we think it might be popular, instead of doing the right thing, showing people the benefits, and then it being popular. And so when it comes to climate and nature, we're all aware of the co-benefits. And Liam and I, we get a lot of emails from residents, and often it will be those who don't like it who are the loudest. And we've got to be brave to push things through. To Zaina's point earlier on the congestion charge and on ULEZ, for example, I'm very pleased that I got elected way after the ULEZ debate happened in Westminster, but nobody would want to reverse it now. And when you guys head into central London later, look at how many black cabs are electric, look at how many buses are electric, and look out for the electric Westminster City Council waste fleet, the first one in the country. And the reason that we've been able to do all that is because we've got good public transport in London, because we've invested in EV charging points, but also because Sadiq Khan had the bravery to implement ULEZ. And we saw how controversial it was with the expansion into outer London last year. In the next 5 years, go out to outer London, see how many people are still complaining about it. Political bravery leads to us being able to make these solutions and make these answers. That also links, therefore, into the proper integration. The reason that other cities can't yet implement congestion charges is because their public transport system doesn't work as well. Greater Manchester is a good example. I'm from Stockport, so I spend a lot of time up there. Since the B network's coming up there, my mum's getting the bus way more. She didn't used to get the bus that often because it was infrequent, it was unreliable. And if you look at that on a citywide basis, when I'm getting the train up north, I've got to get Avanti West Coast. If any of you have got Avanti West Coast, you know how atrocious they are at turning up on time and how expensive they are. And increasingly, I know friends that will drive between Manchester and London because then they can guarantee they'll get to their dinner on time. They'll guarantee they'll get to their event on time. That's poor planning. If we can fix our train system, few people will get in cars, and it'll have that impact on the climate. Third part then is funding. From a council's perspective, you've heard about the financial issues that we find ourselves in. I'm not going to pay for the vast majority of the decarbonisation that happens in Westminster. For an example, we did our local area energy plan. It predicted we're going to need £5.1 billion just to decarbonise heating and energy just in Westminster. I don't have that money. So I've got to be able to work with the private sector, work with developers, work with people who are building things to convince them that this is the way to do it, and to do it in a net zero way. So it all links together, but I think ultimately it comes back to proper leadership in place and having that confidence to make the right decisions.
Thank you very much. I'm going to give one last question to Chris on this subject, and then I'm hoping there'll be time for a couple of questions from the audience, because I'm sure you've got some that you'd like to ask the panel. Great. So Chris, RE100 works with leaders right across the UK. What's the most promising trend you're seeing in city leadership today that will address some of these barriers and put in place some of these solutions?
I think specifically on nature, you're seeing a lot more ecological emergencies being declared, twinned with proper nature strategies that are integrated in other plans and strategies. So in housing, in neighborhood plans, in transport. And I think that's to be celebrated. That's really encouraging. And I think if I could just loop back around onto the points we just heard, I think the status quo is costing us. And I don't think we make that case enough. So it's always, well, making the case for the change, but actually making the case of exactly where we are today and what that cost is for communities. Because we're not living in a utopia at the moment, and we're dragging ourselves to this net zero and this kind of nature recovered place just because we have to. This is something that's going to improve people's lives. I don't think we make that case for change and that case for a cost of inaction as strongly as we should. And I think we need to get the economics right. It's got to make sense to people. And sometimes, especially on some transport schemes, you can see it and you just think, well, that doesn't make any sense, as a layperson. So I think we have to challenge ourselves as well to deliver better public policy and interventions. But I think you're seeing far more, especially in housing, moving, kind of looking at some of those low-tech solutions, and nature offers that, but it offers so many more benefits. If I could just talk about one quick scheme, connecting the Colne in Devon. So Devon's flooding costs could be up to £1 billion by the end of this century. Now, it feels like a long time away, but it's also a significant sum of money. And what they could look at is big grey infrastructure to try and adapt, but what they've looked at is green infrastructure. And the Connecting the Colne project is something that is, we give a case study in our research, and also there's a great example in Liverpool with their Green Up project as well, on how all of these extra benefits. So as well as reducing flooding risk, it's improved water quality. It's also improved soil erosion by up to 40%, so it's leading to better farming yields in Devon. It's also helping the transport infrastructure. So National Rail is estimating that one of their kind of crossing points, they're going to save £100,000 annually in kind of avoided flood damages and flood risks. So they're the kind of things, those wider social benefits of the interventions we make. We're only scratching the surface, I think, in understanding it, which is why nature is going to be one of those things that we talk a lot more in the coming years.
Thank you. So that's the superpower of proper planning and integrated cost counting, so that we can work out the cost of not changing as well as the cost of changing. Now, I would like to go to you guys. I think we've got a tiny bit of time left, and I'm going to come over here so I can see you. But yes, questions here, please. And yeah, the mic's coming to you. And if I can have one or two others, thank you, over there as well. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hello. There is no silver bullet for all that polycrisis issues. But there is one magical power that nature has, and it's vegetation that address both mitigation and adaptation. And speaking of cities, adaptation of heat and flooding is key, I think. So how to ensure that vegetation at large, and going together with removing concrete and tarmac, is included in all projects, short-term ones, not for decades far away, because it's a key to address mitigation adaptation of both climate and biodiversity crisis.
So nature-based solutions, who would like to pick this one up?
Happy to jump in. It's all about embedding it in the way that we develop policy. So planning is obviously a fundamental part to start with here. We've just done a partial city plan update in Westminster, which looks all at the environmental impacts. So we've got a retrofit first policy, etc. But a big part of that is making sure that there's SUDs, green walls, green roofs, actually properly thought through whenever any planning application comes in. So that's one thing. Then the bigger thing is general master plan. So we launched our biodiversity strategy last year. I've mentioned how we declared an ecological emergency only in 2023. But a big part of that has been working with the landowners in Westminster. So the Royal Parks, the great estates that we have, Grosvenor, Portman, all these guys. And it's mapping out the whole city and looking at, well, look, we've got a park here, but what's the greenery between it? And how do we join that up? What are those green spines, those green walkways? And there's big schemes that we're working on at the minute. You'll all be familiar with Regent Street, a world-famous street. We're working at the minute to green that entire route so the two parks are joined up. And what that means now is that whenever anyone comes to me as the cabinet member with any sort of idea, I'm expecting it to have something green attached to it. Because ultimately, the benefits you've talked about, it's adaptation, it's reducing emissions and everything else.
Thank you. I've just been given a signal that we've got to wrap up, so I'm going to ask for this question here, and then you can answer them both together, and that will be our lot. So please go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you. It was a really nice talk. I'm just wanted to come back to Ben's comment about to success. We should have a shared vision with the people who live around the neighborhood or society, right? And I was wondering if you could give an example of like a successful project where a shared vision even before the project have come. I think we're in this point where we can do participation as we have done, and I just was quite interested and happy you brought that up because you, from what I heard, is one of the only ones who mentioned like people participation or people actually in this topic.
And if it's okay, I'll link the two questions. First of all, I completely agree. My own background is energy and emissions, but when you write a climate action plan, all the interventions are basically nature-based solutions. So it's really clear the link there. I've seen really inspirational. Well, I guess it depends on what you call success. But for me, I think I've been involved in two projects which I would consider to be successful in that they've created a vision that other people have then got behind. So one was the London National Park City. I was part of a campaign for 7 years. We were knocking on every business, every local authority, everyone we could ever think of over 7 years, and eventually got London designated as the world's first national park city in 2019. The London National Park City is a vision for the whole of London, but within that there's loads of small projects, and Ryan's just talked about Westminster. There's really exciting projects like the Wild West End, which I think again is a really great sort of visionary project to join up lots of green. So there's just a couple of examples. I know we're short on time, but I think sometimes when you put out something that's kind of inspirational as a vision, if you can get one or two people following on, and then more and more, and then it builds and builds and builds, those are the ones which I find really exciting. And then politicians, businesses, and everyone else kind of stands up, takes notice because it's happening anyway. You may as well get on board. It's a good story.
Thank you. So just to close, I think we've heard that nature and community are not competing interests. They can be solved together. We've heard of the importance of leadership and an innovative approach to solve some of these challenges as we move forward. And to demonstrate that, just for our final thing, I'm going to make each one of you mayor of your favourite city. You don't have to say which one it is, but you do need to tell us, in one sentence, what would be the first policy you would enact? Chris, do you want to start?
A tourist tax, and I would use that money for placemaking, nature-based solutions, and some of the basic things that I think our city is really calling out for around, cleaner spaces to be in, more bins, some of the basics that have just been neglected. So I think a tourist tax is eminently sensible. I think local government should have more tax-raising powers than it does. I think it's a travesty that they're trying to do all this with two hands tied behind their backs. I think that's a good way to go.
Perfect. You're elected. Zaina.
What's your question?
You're mayor of a city. What's the very first policy you would enact in one sentence?
I didn't mention enough congestion charging, maybe. I think I would make it more difficult for people to drive within the city, and but then I would try to be fair for some exceptions, like driving your elderly mother to the hospital. I will make an exception for that.
On behalf of mothers, I'm grateful, but great, you're elected as well. Liam.
Well, I replaced the mayor, so technically I'm in a position to do these things. No, I'd point to the things that we already are doing, but we actually want much greater devolved autonomy. When we were talking about political bravery, we've got to remember this country is so centralised, and things like the bus re-regulation that we're doing, that was a power that was taken away from us in the 1980s. So cracking on with that, delivering our rapid transit network that we're doing, continuing our very successfully devolved rail network, and building on that with further financial powers. We'd love to do a tourist tax. We don't currently have the power to do that. We'd love devolution over things like air passenger duty and how we could utilise that. And equally, we want to see Treasury's Green Book changed, actually, so the big infrastructure projects like the Liverpool-Manchester Railway, like the Mersey Tidal Barrage, could be paid for over a longer journey with us locally and national government as well.
Thank you. We are being told these sentences are too long. So, final 2 sentences to Ben and Ryan.
Mine needs a bit of refinement. I'm going to find 100 really inspirational environmental leaders. I'm going to pair them up with primary schools, and then I'm going to give money to those primary schools and help to fill out their grant applications for amazing things in their school grounds.
Wonderful. Ryan.
Well, firstly, I'm very pro a tourist tax in Westminster. You can read all about our statements online as to why we think it's needed. If I was mayor of one of the new mayor combined authorities that the government's creating, there's 2 things I'd do. One is I'd lobby upwards for even more devolved power. As Liam says, we're the most centralised country in the Western world, and that is problematic, being able to do these things locally. But the key thing I would do is enable my constituent authorities. So if I'm the mayor of London, I would enable Westminster, Camden, everyone else to be able to plan longer term, because the mayors are going to be given longer term planning ability with the new devolved powers. We need to then enable the councils to plan longer term so that we can get in that private investment, everything else that we need to meet our targets.
Thank you. Would you please join me in thanking our fantastic panel?